I'm just saying. Yes, sir.
I have a question about the STAR test.
Okay, can we talk about the STAR test later?
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Today we're going to review rounding. And rounding's pretty easy because you've been doing rounding since you were 6 months old. The only thing we're adding is you can round to the hundredths place as well. So here's the places we'll probably be rounding to. The nearest whole number. And remember what Mr. McMurdo says, that rounding to the nearest whole number is the same as rounding to what place value?
The one.
The ones place. Why is it called a whole number?
Because it's one whole.
Because that's where the wholes are.
Yeah.
Everything behind the decimal point are parts of a whole. So let's say we have 16 and 48 hundredths, and I'm rounding to the nearest whole number. What number's in my whole numbers place? Anybody? 6. Once I figure out the number I'm rounding, I'm either going to add 1 to it or I'm going to add 0 to it. I determine that by looking behind it. If the number behind it is less than 5, I add 0. If the number behind it is 5 or greater, I'm going to add 1. So what am I going to add to this one? 0, because the number behind it is less than 5. So I add 0. And anything behind the number I underlined then becomes a 0. So I could make this 16.00 or I could just make it 16. Either way, it's the same number. It's like saying I have 16 and 0 tenths and 0 hundredths. Well, it's the same thing as just having 16. It's the same thing as having 16. Let's take 249 and 73 hundredths. 249 and 73 hundredths. What is in my ones place? 9. I look behind the 9. So the behind the 9 is a 7. What am I going to add to the 9? 1 or 0? 1. So if I'm adding 1, 9 plus 1 is 10. I got to regroup. 5. So now my answer is 250. That is why I add the 1. I don't just say, oh, move this up to 0, because I've seen a lot of times in the past then people get 240. Remember, when we're doing the whole number, we don't have to put the zeros behind it. We can, but you don't have to. Let's look at nearest tenth. If we're rounding to the nearest tenth, the tenths is how many places behind the decimal point? 1. Just think of it like dimes. There's 10 dimes in a dollar. Oh, let's take 24 and 88 hundredths. 24 and 88 hundredths. We already said the tenths place is the first one behind the decimal point. We look behind it. Behind it we have an 8. So what are we going to add to the tenths place? 1 or 0?
1.
Add 1. So I'm going to get 9. And I'm going to get 24 and 9 tenths. I can put the 0 there, but I cannot put the 8 back. Anything behind what I underlined becomes a 0.
But where are you getting that 1 you're adding?
Because that's how we're rounding up. We're rounding to the nearest tenth. So is it closer to 8 tenths or 9 tenths? Those are my two choices, 8 tenths or 9 tenths. And this one is closer to 8 tenths. Okay, because behind it is, closer to 9 tenths because behind it is an 8 in the hundredths place. Let's look at one more. 329 and 44 hundredths. My tenths place is one place behind my decimal point. I look behind it into the hundredths place. What am I adding to my underlined place? 0. So that just stays a 4, decimal point straight down. I don't have to put this The number behind it is a 0. Don't rewrite that number behind it. Anything behind what we underlined just stays a 0, because we're trying to figure out, is it 329 and 4/10 or 329 and 5/10? And then when we added our, everything in front of it is like it is when you add, but don't put numbers behind it. That's what I saw on the review that we did the other day. And the only other way you'll have to round is nearest hundredth. There's a crazy looking N. The nearest hundredth, and this is the only thing that is being added in 5th grade. You've already rounded to whole numbers and everything in front of the whole numbers, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. Now we're just adding to the nearest hundredth, which makes sense since the only place value we added in 5th grade is the thousandths place. So let's take 2 and 795. The hundredths place has the 9 in it. We look behind the hundredths place, and what place is this? What place is it?
Thousandths.
Thousandths. We look behind it. So what am I going to add to the 9? 1 or 0?
1.
1. Because this 5 makes this be able to round up. So if I add my 1, 9 and 1 is 10. Now I got to carry. I got to regroup it. So 2 and 80 hundredths, or 2 and 800 thousandths, or 2 and 8 tenths. Either way, that's how it'd be working. Easy peasy, raw chicken squeezy. Boom! Shakalaka, peace out, God bless, love you, do something kind today. Happy birthday, Travis. Save the bees, subscribe.